Hi, welcome to our email marketing talks. Today's topic is email marketing in restaurants, but before I introduce my guest, I just wanted to tell you a little bit about email marketing talks. We started this in April, and the idea really being that we would bring email marketing strategies to small businesses that you can learn more about how you can utilize email marketing better for your business. And we've done a lot of webinars, some trainings, and now this is our first live. So I'm really excited about our guest today. Andy Jacoby is also my brother, and I'm gonna let him introduce himself and then we'll get into some questions. And we'll also be launching the Q&A. So if you have questions as we go, feel free to put them in the chat box and we will answer them at some point during the webinar today. Thank you. Andy, introduce yourself.
Okay, thank you, Liz, and hello, everyone. So my name is Andy Jacoby. Aside from being Liz's brother, I'm also in the restaurant business. I started a restaurant group in New York City in 2012 called Untamed Sandwiches. I ran that for about a little over 5 years. Then I went to go work in operations and marketing with a group called Taim, which is a really awesome falafel shop based in New York City as well. And then most recently, or currently, I am the CFO of a restaurant group called Sticky's Finger Joint with restaurants in New York City and New Jersey, 13 restaurants between those two locations. So throughout my time in restaurants, obviously as an entrepreneur, I focused on everything under the sun, everything within our four walls, including marketing and finance and operations. At Taim, I was much more focused on operations, but also did a lot of work in terms of marketing and thinking about different channels to use to drive customers into our restaurants. And then now at Sticky's, where I'm purely in a finance role, I get to work with our marketing team and help them think about driving value through the marketing efforts that they have.
Great. So thanks so much for joining today. Before we get started, we should let everyone know with the joys of working from home, you might hear a dog bark, a child in the background. So that's just the way it goes these days. So the first question I have for you, Andy, is how have you utilized email marketing in your restaurants?
Sure. So email marketing is always one of multiple pieces that is available to restaurateurs within the marketing ecosystem. But what I think makes email so unique is that it's the best tool to use to reach existing customers. Most other forms of marketing with restaurants and with any retail business really revolve around trying to drive new guests to experience your business and your brand for the first time. Email is easily the best and the best proven method to stay in touch with your existing customers and to promote your business and promote the idea that they should come back more frequently.
Great. So how have you used email successfully to re-engage customers? Because in the restaurant world, as with any business, people are highly engaged when they first visit your business. At some point over their relationship with you, they may start coming in less, they may have moved away, then they move back. How have you used email to kind of win back that customer who you just haven't seen in a certain period of time?
Sure. So Liz knows this quite well because she helped design the program for us at Untamed Sandwiches. What the program that we developed to reach all kinds of customers, but that worked especially well with lapsed customers, or just in general, increasing the frequency of guests, was by tying our loyalty program to our POS and requiring that guests who sign up for our loyalty program provide their email address. So what that allowed us to do was to track guest frequency in the restaurant and to tie it back to an email. So if we had an email marketing, if we had something we wanted to promote in the restaurant, we could send it out through email to our loyalty list, which by definition are your customers, your both your best customers as well as your lapsed customers. And so what we would, the program that we developed segmented customers into different buckets. So some buckets might be customers that had come in the last week and you wanted to target them differently than customers that maybe hadn't been in the last month. So for a customer that hadn't been in the last month, we might send them out an email that wouldn't necessarily call them out for not coming in for the last month, but might have a particular promotion that we thought might be exciting for a guest who hadn't thought about Untamed in a while. And that might be different than the kind of promotion that you send to a guest that comes in very regularly. You know, for your guest that's coming in very regularly, you might be focusing more on kind of what's special about your brand. For a guest that hasn't been in for a long time, you might focus on something that is much more direct and much more targeted. You know, come in the next week and get a free lemonade with your sandwich or something like that.
So when you think of tracking people who haven't been in or people who are your frequent customers, how are you defining success when you utilize email as a way to drive people back in?
Yeah,
I know
sorry.
In your case, we were easily able to tie it to your point of sale. So we knew based on if someone opened the email, then if they came in within a 24-hour period, we could attribute that to the email, especially if we hadn't seen them in a long time. But in general, like, how can restaurants, if you can't be that granular about it, how can restaurants attribute success to this type of program where you're trying to win people back and to keep them engaged with your brand?
Sure. So I will say that the best way to do it is if you have a loyalty program that ties into your POS. And there's a lot on the restaurant side. There are a number of POS systems that do have a loyalty program connected to it. I've always been a big fan of Toast, and Toast Loyalty is a very simple, basic loyalty program that allows you to do this. But there are others as well. If for whatever reason you can't do that, and you're still sending out email blasts to your guests, and you want to track the results of those emails, you can still do it. You just can't necessarily tie it back to the individual customer. So if you think about it, if you have a way of capturing emails for your customers that's not being tracked in the POS basically, and not being tracked through a loyalty program, so they don't have any. What the loyalty program allows for is it incentivizes the guest to continue to enter in their email address or continue to sign in every time they come to your business, and that allows you to keep track of their purchases. But if you don't have access to that, you can still send out an email and track the success of the program by offering some kind of reward for guests who take advantage of it. Maybe it's an off-menu item that you decide to promote through email, and that's something that you know that at least unless it's through word of mouth, every single person who's ordering that menu item is doing it because they received the email. Or alternatively, you offer some kind of coupon code. And you say, you know, if you bring in this email, you'll get whatever the promotion is that you're looking to promote. And that's something that in the aggregate you can track. At Untamed, when we were tracking the success of emails, what we were looking for is, because we did have the tie-in with Toast Loyalty and Toast POS, is we could measure the frequency of transactions for guests that were a part of our loyalty system, our loyalty program, and then we could track how many of those guests came in more frequently in the 2 days after we had sent out the latest email, or how many guests, sorry, let me put that a different way. How many guests that were within our loyalty program would come in a typical 2-day period, and then how many guests within our loyalty program came in the 2 days following receiving an email. And that's how we could attribute success or not success to an email campaign. And what's so unique about email is there's no other program that I can think of that is where the ROI is so easy to trace and so quick to trace. You can do it just through your own POS data. So that was how we used email and loyalty effectively.
And I've worked with brands who weren't able to really tie it back specifically to their POS, but we would have very specific offers that were specific to email, where they could come in, they could show the offer on the phone. And even though we couldn't say, well, customer Andy Jacoby with this email address came in because of this offer, we were able to say we sent out X number of emails and X number redeemed. So even if you don't have a POS system or a loyalty and POS system that work together, you still can utilize email to track success in terms of getting people to come back. One of the other questions that I kind of just want to piggyback on, so we're talking about mostly restaurants in the fast casual space, so where people are likely to go to that restaurant on a regular basis or more frequently than they might for a full service restaurant. So what have you seen email help with those people who come in the first time, they join your loyalty program, because usually there's some type of incentive to join loyalty. Have you ever done a program where you've tried to win them back after that first visit to kind of get them to be that loyal customer that we, really believe every business should have?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that clearly loyalty and email work extremely well with businesses that depend on volume, where the value of being able to bring a guest that would normally come in once every other week and finding a way to bring them in once a week is A, very achievable, and B, very effectively done with email marketing. With a business that maybe has a higher check average, which is really, in my view, the only difference in how you think about marketing for a full service, especially like a full service casual restaurant versus a fast casual restaurant, would be the check average is higher, and maybe the frequency of visit doesn't have to be quite as high for a full service restaurant, but you're still looking to continue to build brand awareness, continue to drive loyalty, whether you have a loyalty program or not. You're continuing to try to build loyalty among your guests. And it's just a question of what content you want to share. If a guest goes to your establishment and has a great experience, they're likely to want to come back. What email allows you to do is to market to them in a very targeted way and allow you to kind of build that feeling of why they need to come back and relive that great experience that they had the first time.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And I think the nice thing about having a loyalty program and an email program that really tie in together is when we talk about email marketing in general, we talk about the importance of the customer journey, which is engaging your new customer, getting them to be loyal, and then, if you lose them, to try to win them back. So one of the nice things about the tie-in that I've seen when there's a loyalty program is that we know when that person has visited, we can thank them for their visit, we can encourage them to come back, we can send them an offer, if the brand allows for that. And I think, based on what you're saying, you see that there's value for that, both in the more fast casual space as well as like a full service business. I think we lost your picture, Andy. No. There you are.
Sorry, got a phone call. It's
Oh.
another about Zoom chats. I'm
So
sorry.
I don't know if you need me to repeat the question.
I apologize. Would you mind?
Oh, that's fine. So, you know, I just want to, it sounds like what you're saying is that all of this in terms of like building customer loyalty would work well, not only with the fast casual environment that you've worked in, but more in a full service restaurant environment. Because I work with both types of restaurants, but more that are full service sit down, and then those that are in the fast casual space as well.
Yeah, look, it works well with both. Any business that is trying to increase the frequency of visit of their guests should be focusing on, should be using email. I guess like the only business that I could think of, the only restaurant that maybe isn't thinking that way is like the Per Se's and the French Laundries of the world, the places that are so special occasion and so well known that they don't need to send out an email to remind people that that the French Laundry is one of the best restaurants in the world, and if you have a lot of money and a very special experience or a very special occasion that you want to celebrate, you might think about going there. For almost every other restaurant, you're trying to build regulars and you're trying to get them to come back more frequently. And so whether it's through some kind of discount or promotion, or whether it's just by providing them with content that shares with them what you're doing that's so special, email is such a easy and effective way to do that. I actually like shameless plug for another one of your clients or favorite restaurants, Cinque Terre. I love that they send out a weekly special where they do a weekly special that's like very different than something that they would normally put on their menu. Not the kind of thing that a chef really just thinks up last minute to put on the menu as a special. This is something that's very labor intensive, very special. And they blast out an email about it a week in advance and take advance orders for it. That's a great example of a way to send out an email where you can then collect feedback on how it went, because you know how many people you sent it to, how many orders you got for that special, and there's a very clear ROI that you can develop from that. And they're a full service restaurant, so.
Yeah, and I see a lot with full service restaurants, especially during this time. This kind of segues into how you can utilize email during COVID, but especially during this time when at least in the beginning, there was a lot of confusion. Were places open? Were they open for curbside and takeout? And then when some states started to open, were they open for indoor? So, email was a great way for these types of businesses to communicate that. I also think, just in terms of what you said about the specials, it's an easy way to get the message out about something is different about your business today, like a menu special, a change in menu. It's just a really great way. And you know exactly how many people saw that message based on what you sent to, even if the goal for that is not necessarily like getting someone in the door that day. If the goal is just informational, you at least know who saw it, and you can see if you saw an uptick in your business, shortly after that or not.
Absolutely. I would say it's more than just an easy way. It's one of the only ways right now. So many places, California, New York, there are so many major metro markets where restaurants can't do dine-in service. And the normal ways that you might think, and I've always thought this too, that your storefront is your single best form of marketing. I would tie into that the way that you train your team to provide great hospitality is probably also tied with your storefront for your single greatest form of marketing. Well, you don't really have either of those right now because you don't have the ability to serve guests in your establishment. You need to find some way to reach out to your guests and continue to maintain the relationship that you've worked so hard to build. When you're essentially hamstrung from being able to provide that in-person warmth and hospitality and with your guests.
And it's interesting that you say that, because it is so true. Sometimes the restaurant you pick to dine at is because you're out and about and you see that restaurant during this time now where people are not as out and about as normal. You really want to make sure that people are remembering your restaurant. And I know for myself, we haven't been really going out to restaurants, but we've been ordering takeout from all the restaurants that we would normally go to. And it's been really interesting because the ones that have continuously sent us emails with a new special, or, now there's cocktails to go, their wine list, as well as like how we can easily order from them, those have been the ones that are always top of mind when we say, what are we going to eat tonight? There's like, the 5 or 6 that we always are going to, because they've stayed top of mind during a time where we're just not out as much. So we don't really think about, different restaurants.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true.
So how the next question I had was, how would you compare social media efforts to email marketing efforts? Like, what have you seen work well for these channels separately? Is there something that works well when these channels work together for restaurants?
Mm-hmm. Both are very important. I think they're important for different reasons. And I've seen some good usage of connecting the two, but there are some other good reasons why they're never going to be fully connected. If you think about what is the value and the greatest impact that you can have through social media, it's through what I call halo level marketing, just kind of creating that brand in a way that is hard to really derive an ROI from, but that there is some value to be had from having a great social media presence. Stickies is a great example of that. We have a huge number of Instagram followers. And I think the reason that we do is because we have such unique content and we have such a unique brand voice, but we don't really, I guess Instagram has made it more, it has given you the ability to learn something about who is interacting with you on the platform. But really you don't know where the majority of people are coming from, or whether they're actually going to be future customers spending money in your business, or whether they're just people that like what you do on social media. That's very different than the target of email, where email you are trying to reach your existing customers, and they're existing customers because they made the conscious decision to sign up. Again, if you tie it to a loyalty program, oftentimes they signed up in your restaurant after spending money. So the kind of content that you use is very different. I think there's a lot of value to be had in building up your social media following, especially for restaurants on Instagram. And there's also obviously value to getting more people to join your email marketing list. So I've seen good programs that cross market between the two. Maybe it's a post on social media on Instagram where you say, sign up for our email newsletter and receive XYZ. And maybe you set up an email where someone who signs up for the newsletter gets an automatic, free drink the next time they're in the restaurant. And then conversely, you can send out an email that says, follow us on Instagram and receive XYZ. So, I think guests are always open to, if they like what you're doing, they're always open to learning more about you through different channels. But I think it's just important to remember that while both are important, the kind of content that you share should be different between the two.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the content should probably be cohesive, but obviously on social, you're able to get people who may not be your customer or may not know about your brand, where on email, it's opt-in only if you're doing it correctly. And so you're not going to get people necessarily, you're not going to get a huge growth of email acquisition the way you can on social. I work with a client, and I'd love your take on this. Their social media audience, when they looked at the analysis for them, none of them were, or a very small percentage, probably like 2 to 3% of their followers lived anywhere near one of their restaurants. Mm-hmm. So every time they posted something on social, the engagement was pretty low. But they had a large following, but the engagement was low. They weren't able to track people, who came in. And they also knew, based on the location, that most people did not live near any of their locations. So we kind of did sort of the reverse. I mean, we always tell people, market your email on social media, but in this case, we did the reverse. We took their email list, we did a contest just to their email list, encouraging them to also follow them on social. And not only did they increase their followers pretty significantly with direct customers, but they also started to see more engagement with their social channels, because now they knew that their social channels had more customers than just more, brand followers. They're a brand that people would probably, similar to Stickies, they're interested in the food. The food looks really good, but they may or may not live near one of the locations. So in this case, we were able to increase their social media engagement through the email channel.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's something you've seen with other restaurants that you've worked with.
It's a great example, and I think it speaks to another big difference between social and email, which is that social is a conversation, whereas email is a one-way platform for the business to speak directly to the customer. So the advantage you have with social is customers can give you feedback, customers can ask you questions. They of course can email you the same, but there's a public forum feature to social media that you don't get with email. And for some businesses, some businesses probably are more challenged to build an email list than they are to build a social media following. Other businesses are probably more challenged to build a social media following than they are an email list. And it depends on kind of where your focus has been and what your brand lends itself to. I think back to, actually at Taim, for a while, we did not really have much of a focus on our social. Or I'll say that the focus was on beautiful pictures of food, and they were very beautiful pictures of food, but we weren't really being as thoughtful about telling the story and engaging guests as we could have been. And we brought in a new director of marketing who really changed that, and really started thinking about the social media platforms, in particular Instagram, as being a conversation. And so she would post things and say, tell us your favorite falafel, what's your favorite falafel topping? And there'd be a picture of a fully loaded falafel pita or something like that. And that kind of thing is so powerful with social, in order to also create warm feelings, create engagement, get guests excited about their next visit into the restaurant. It's a different, like I said, the two channels are so different, but they require a different voice, different kind of content, different thought about how you engage your guests.
Yeah, it's very true. And, the brand story for any type of brand, whether it's a restaurant, a brick and mortar store, an e-commerce business, the brand story is so important. And especially today, when people really are kind of starving for communication, telling your brand story is just so important. And I think social media is a very easy, pretty way to be able to tell your brand story. But businesses should also do the same on email. and tell the story of the brand, whether it's talking about, how your food is made, who works in your restaurants, the story of the owners, like what made them decide to start a restaurant. I think all of those are things that can be told both in email and in social, and definitely should be now.
Yeah. No, you're definitely right. You're definitely right.
So before we go to some questions, any other tips that you want to share, about email marketing during COVID and, beyond, because we will one day be back to much more normal.
Yeah.
So any tips that you could share just in general, like, one or two that really have been super successful? It doesn't have to be an email, just marketing in general for a restaurant.
Sure. So I would say, the same rules of marketing still apply today as they did pre-COVID. Around email, you want to build a frequency of distribution of emails. You want to be able to create that expectation from guests that they're going to hear from you on a pretty regular basis. And that shouldn't change today just because most people are working from home, or a lot of people are working from home. If anything, like I said, it's more important that I think they hear from you more frequently. And to your point earlier, I think there's probably more kind of critical, valuable information that you can share with them today than what you were sharing with them before. Reopening of dining rooms, launching of a to-go cocktail list, launching a new takeout menu. All of these things would kind of wither on the vine if they weren't marketed through various digital channels. But again, no channel is better for reaching your current guests, your existing customer base, than email. I also think that this is a time when the whole world, or at least the everyone that I know in this country, I think is hurting, but also very hopeful that the restaurant industry and retail in general will rebound. More so than at any time before, I think the guests that come and spend money at your business, in a lot of cases, are doing it not just because they're hungry for lunch or dinner that day, but because they actually care about you and want to support you. And so that's a really interesting opportunity to think about, how do you build your list of supporters? How do you build the list of people that care about you and maybe didn't know how they could hear from you, but if with a little bit of work in terms of engaging them through email and social media, you can continue to foster those wonderful feelings about why they supported you and why they liked you pre-COVID, and set yourselves up to create a really nice, lasting relationship with guests, even when this pandemic has run its course.
Yeah, I think it's so true. I've seen so many businesses work so hard now to connect with customers in a way that they probably didn't think about before this. I've seen some more on like the brick and mortar side, like when they have storefronts, that they are creating hashtags. They're asking their customers, what are you working on? Share what you're working on to this specific hashtag, as a way to build community. And I think that's been really nice. I also see that businesses, there's a wine bar restaurant that I love in Santa Monica, as you know, Esther's, and I've been part of their wine club for several years now. And they basically, because we couldn't be together for months, they've done Zoom tasting. So we still get our wine, we still get to be together. And it's been really nice because we've gotten to know the business in a different way than we did just by being a customer there. I also think, when you see that all of these people are working from home, they're pivoting their business, you see into their lives differently than you do when you're just going into a place. And I think it's been really nice to see that. And I agree. I think from what I hear from both businesses and then, among people who go to those businesses that people are very hopeful that there is this feeling like, they want that business, that restaurant, that store to be around when this is over. And I think that's why people are supporting all these small businesses, especially, always, but during this time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I see we have a couple of questions, and then if there are any more, please just put it in the chat box and we'll answer them. So the first one is about frequency. How often should emails be sent? And I'll answer, and then I'll ask Andy to answer. So I think it definitely depends on the type of restaurant that you have. If you are more of a sit-down restaurant, you probably don't need to be emailing daily, because chances are someone's not going to come into your establishment daily. You could be emailing once a week, make sure people know about reservations when you're open, what your specials are. But if you're in the more fast casual, and especially like in a business area where people could go and eat at your place like 3 times a week, you may want to consider emailing twice a week. I think daily, you kind of get that glaze over effect. People see it in your inbox and then they forget about it or they start to ignore it. I also think over time, you want to keep revisiting your frequency to see if your frequency is getting you the results you want. If you're mailing weekly and you're seeing over time that people are no longer opening, there are all different strategies that you can do to kind of combat that, but really just keep an eye on it. So I'd love to hear your take on frequency from what you've seen.
Well, you obviously know this a lot better than I do, but I agree with everything you said. I think that the answer of how frequently you should send is like you said, very dependent on the business. But the answer is also probably more frequently than you would think. I think that business owners tend to think that people don't think about their businesses very much, or wouldn't be interested in hearing about what's going on with their business or what they are offering to guests in that moment. And I think the reality is that you can send email more frequently than you think. I think that comes to a point. I don't think I've ever seen a mom and pop that reached that point. There are certainly plenty of large retailers looking to drive transactions through e-commerce who I feel like I feel like
mail daily.
Right. But I've never seen a restaurant that I felt did it too frequently. I've seen way more that I feel like do it not frequently enough. A good answer is probably weekly or bi-weekly, depending on your business and how frequent you think, how much, what's the level of frequency of your guests. But to your point also, Liz, I think you can come up with a plan and then look at the data, which is something that's unique to email in terms of open rates and any kind of engagement rate, and make a determination then about whether you're emailing too frequently or not enough.
Yeah, with all our clients, we come up with a plan of what we think will work best for the brand, but then we reevaluate, on a monthly basis and determine, were we mailing too much? When we increased frequency, did we see good results? With some of my restaurant clients that started and they were mailing maybe once a month or, every other week, when we did have months where we mailed more frequently, they saw really good results. So then suddenly they wanted to mail weekly, which I think makes sense. Also on the frequency side, I did notice, especially, once businesses started to close down, I got emails letting me know about closings from businesses that I had not been into in well over a year. And in most cases, I had not received emails from them in well over a year. So for the first communication to just be, hey, we're closing, isn't really a positive communication. So I do think if businesses in general are collecting email address, you have to be sending something.
Yeah.
The last question we have, and then we'll just wrap up, was how do I get started with a program and when was the right time? So I'll take that one. I think it's always good to think about what your overall marketing plan is. In terms of when you should get started with email, the earlier the better, because it is a great way to communicate to your customers on a frequent basis, and you know so much about them. So I think, similar to when you start a business, if you don't have a website up, people may not take you seriously. I also think having an email and social media presence from day one is really important.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think another big factor in being able to send out emails is also being able to collect emails. So you need to have a good method for how you're going to collect emails. With Untamed, we didn't really start to build a really good email list until we built the loyalty program, and then all of a sudden our email list flourished. Before that, I think it was just our parents and a couple of their friends who were receiving my emails. And again, I probably wasn't sending them out frequently enough. But once I signed up for Toast Loyalty and once I started working with Liz, we started collecting a lot more emails and sending them out in a much more targeted way. At Stickies, we send emails about once a week right now. And the way that our method for collecting emails is only through online orders, which right now is great. But we've thought about how do we change that? How do we make sure that we can we have a good method for collecting emails once a larger percentage of our business is coming from in-store orders again. So.
And it's interesting you say that, a lot of businesses do collect at the POS as part of a loyalty program. But again, I've worked with businesses where that's just not possible for them. And there's a ton of different ways to collect email address. You could do a QR code so that people can go right to your registration page. There's also where you can send text a short code to an SMS, and then you get a bounce back and you can sign up for email that way. So even if you are not tying it into a loyalty program, there are many ways to collect email address when you're in person with someone. That's something that, we talk about a lot, because I also work with real estate brokers who don't necessarily have a website. I mean, they have a website, but most people aren't going to their website to sign up, but they are meeting people at open houses. How do you get people to sign up for their email list? So there are a ton of ways when you're kind of in person with someone versus a website, or if you don't have a loyalty program.
Makes sense.
So I think that's it. Thanks so much, Andy. This was great. And we'll continue to do email marketing talks on various topics. We'll kind of go back and forth between webinars where it's more educational, and then some chats with clients and people within the email industry. So thanks everyone for joining. This was a lot of fun for me. I hope it was fun for you too, Andy.
It sure was. Thanks for having me.
Of course. All right. Thanks, everyone.